So here I am in my camper training at least one of the cats to become accepting. He was scared when he came in, but he's now up on the bed with me. It's all been cleared out, which is good. I was going to sell it. I did have a buyer. I was going to buy the big white Sprinter that I was offered for $3,000. I decided against it because the van is just too big for me at this stage. And plus the fact I'm not at this stage looking to live in a van. However, this video is about the increasing impingement on van lifers and the fact that they are banning people parking up because basically they don't want people being free. I'm seeing a lot of it at the moment, and there is a chap that's trying to gather a community of people together to protest against these impingements. His YouTube channel is called Roads Home, and I commend him. Very much like what a lot of us were doing by the millions in 2020, basically saying, what was going on in the world and how our freedoms were being taken away. Now, I started reading a book a couple of years ago called The Falsification of History, Our Distorted Reality. And I stopped reading it because there was a paragraph in it that sent me into a lot of fear. But I feel in the right frame of mind at the moment to start reading it again. And I've just come across a paragraph that I think is quite applicable to what's going on with not just the van life community, with the Western world in general. And I think the norm is out there, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I just mean those of you who believe what the governments say. I think you need to start waking up a little bit. So there's no way to rule innocent men. The only power any government has is the power to crack down on criminals. Well, when there aren't enough criminals, one makes them. One declares so many things to be a crime that it becomes impossible for men to live without breaking laws. Who wants a nation of law-abiding citizens? What's there in it for anyone? But just to pass the kind of laws that can neither be observed nor enforced nor objectively interpreted, and you create a nation of lawbreakers, and then you cash in on guilt. I can't pronounce the name. Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged. It is now said that there are so many laws, rules and regulations in the first world that each person breaks at least one law per day, if not many more, without even knowing it. But governments are now becoming more obvious and blatant in how they go about making everyone a criminal and finding them ridiculous amounts of money in doing so. Recently, an American family who said that they were simply trying to teach their son about responsibility and entrepreneurship was fined $90,000 by the USDA because the teenager sold $4,600 worth of rabbits he had bred and reared himself in one calendar year without a license. Not only were they ordered to pay $90,000, but they were told that if they did not pay within a short period of time, the fine could increase to as high as $4 million. This one case alone goes to show how easy it now is within the system to take any small transgression and in effect blackmail someone for every penny they have and much more. And it made me think about the van lifers and how they are banning park-ups, basically impinging on people's right to travel. Now, a lot of us were talking about this in 2020, up in arms, but, we were called conspiracy theorists. It's just becoming more and more obvious. And one has to ask, what is freedom? Well, one can only say what freedom means to the individual. Because the reality is, in the real world, in this realm, we're not free. Even living in a van, you're not free. So therefore, it comes to learning about who we truly are as spirit. You see, the van life thing is important to me because it's something that I want to do. But I've been sitting back and just observing the movement and questioning the movement in of itself. I did a video a few days ago regarding the influencer and people moving to van life, and it turns out that a lot of van lifers aren't really aware of the bigger picture, and I think it's really important to be aware of the bigger picture. And the statement that I've just talked about regarding them making laws so that each and every day we break laws, a lot of the laws that we aren't even aware of their existence. Now, what is law? Laws in themselves aren't natural law, so they're just they're created by man, so they're not really laws that we should have to abide. But they've got people in an absolute state of fear that most people don't understand who we truly are. I mean, a really good point of reference for really understanding the corruption of laws and governments is something called the straw man. I don't think you can find the video. It's literally a 5-minute video. I don't think you can find it on YouTube anymore. But I've just come across another part of this book. So I'm afraid that in Britain now, at least, with the rest of the world rapidly following in our wake, we live in a surveillance-based police state with cameras in every shop, bank and public building, and at virtually every street corner in our towns and cities, as well as every few hundred yards along our highways. And in actual fact, I nearly said bridleways there because as someone who used to ride horses, I saw the slow taking away of our bridleways, which forced horse riders onto the roads, which is a very dangerous place to be with an animal that has an instinct of flight. So you try being on a road when your horse spooks and your horse decides to bolt with you. It's frightening. But again, that's just part of one of the agendas. And I did stop actually reading all of this stuff when I read in a book, which I've just got there, called Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, and how it stated in that book that they control each side of the narrative, so both sides of the narrative. So whether you are a mainstream person or a conspiracy person, it's being controlled. And when I started reading this book, I did start to question, it's going on a lot about the fact we don't have free speech, yet we can get hold of a book like this, which is talking about the lack of free speech. So my ever questioning mind does question all the narratives. And I can actually tie myself in knots. And the reality is that we need to be pushing back against every single law, statutes. But the sad thing is that we are in a minority. And the sad thing is that we live in a world where it's encouraged for people to snitch on one another. This was heavily encouraged in 2020. And the sad thing is a lot of people are happy to accept the laws and the freedoms being taken away because they don't understand who they are fundamentally as free beings. And who said the land should belong to a few people? The land is ours. Mother Nature provided the land for us as humans to come here and survive. But then, on the other side of the coin, with my ever-questioning mind, I then turned to AI. I watched a video the other day. I can't remember the name of the chap who was talking about the dangers of AI, but Rudolf Steiner talked about it. Yuval Harari has spoken about it. And again, that's another thing that Yuval Harari has said that's been taken out of context regarding we no longer have free will, we no longer soul spirit, that's no longer a thing. What he's actually saying with the rise of AI, if we are not careful, we no longer have free will. The algorithms are actually choosing for us what we watch, what information we take in. But on the other side of the coin, and again, I've postulated this regarding AI, and it's showing us who we truly are as spirit. So imagine living in a world that is so oppressed, and then the governments come along and offer you a solution. And that solution is free money in your bank account and a visor where you can basically go to anywhere in the world from the comfort of your own home. That's both in and of itself controlling, but also very freeing. So again, there's always two sides of the coin that we can look at something. Is AI being, well, AI is part of what's to come. It's part of the age of Aquarius. AI, technology, freedom, those are fundamental energies that come with being in the age of Aquarius. And I always can't help thinking that there's a bigger picture. I've looked into the Phoenix event, which is a catastrophic event. And I was saying to my friend the other day, because I sent my friend that video, and she said, "Oh my God, what have you sent me that for?" She said, what's the point? What's the point if in 5 years' time, even if you're a millionaire, you're still not going to be, you're going to basically lose everything, have nothing, there is no salvation, basically. Whereas I actually looked at that interview in a very different way. I looked at it as very freeing, because all I can see is oppression and rules and regulations being put in place. And as his book states, if you're not a criminal, they'll make you one by bringing in all these rules and regulations. And again, van life really is a very obvious depiction of that, by banning places to park up, turning other people against those who want to live a free life, who want to travel. So if you think that all your rights and your freedoms are being impinged upon, yes, they are. So then they'll come along and they'll offer a solution, and that solution will be a visor. Potentially, again, it's only what I perceive to, all of this is only what I perceive to understand of the things that I've read regarding the future. But, is it all by design for soul evolution? For us to find that freedom, because it just feels, and it has felt, and I know it's not just from 2020, it's prior to 2020, it just feels like we're in a constant battle, and it gets me down. It's like I've stayed away prior to 2020. I stayed away from the news. I stayed away from all media, and I lived blissfully. And the phrase is ignorance is bliss, but actually it's not bliss at all, because if you're ignorant to it all, then you're not standing up against anything. And then when 2020 hit, of course, I did start to stand up against it. I didn't wear a mask, I didn't stay at home, I didn't walk down the aisle in a supermarket one way and one way only. I spoke out a lot. Where's it got me? And then there are other movements where people are simply not paying their bills and not paying council tax. They're not paying utility bills because they fundamentally understand that we didn't come here to live and pay bills. But you've got to be of a certain disposition to do that, you know. A friend of mine, she did stand up and she stopped paying council tax, and they threatened to take a house off her, and that's a house that's fully paid for. So you have got to be of a certain disposition to stand up. So that's that movement over there. But it just seems like it's a constant fight, a constant battle for us to remain free. You see, so just going back to the AI and the potentiality of a visor. So the freest I've ever felt was when I did my mushroom ceremony. It was the most beautiful experience. And I can imagine the visors being a similar experience, being able to travel wherever your heart desires. And myself included, a lot of people fought against that. But the fact is, I don't think we can fight against it. So they say that there's going to be, I think Klaus Schwab actually said this as well. You'll have your people who embrace the technology, the technocratic civilization, and then you'll have what he called dissidents. And if you think about your dystopian movies, what he means by dissidents are those who don't choose the technocracy, and they live underground, fighting for survival. And a lot of truth seekers and spiritual people say that that's the path that they will choose. They don't want to live under the control of a system that impinges on every movement, and drones following you around, and forcibly being fed, or however it looks. Look, we're always told the worst case, aren't we? Because fear is the ultimate controller when all's said and done. But is the real lesson here? So it gets me thinking about, again, I go back to the age of Aquarius, I go back to the astrology, because I'm having a real appreciation for the importance of astrology and its influence. And throughout the ages, we have been under the influence of astrological forces. And this is no different. And Aquarius is about freedom, but technology. So then one has to ask, are we to accept the technocratic evolution as part of soul evolution? Because that is the natural state, that's the natural order that it's going. And look, I'm not saying yes or no, I'm just postulating some ideas here. Something that I fundamentally fought against. But again, I go back, if this is a simulation, if we're living in a simulation right now, which, you know, is a potentiality, because everything's a potentiality, because nobody knows the truth about anything really, especially the existential stuff, then the visors are going to be another extension of that simulation. And again, this was depicted in the film The 13th Floor, actually depicted in The Matrix, only it wasn't like, you know, they weren't using visors. They were basically, the real humans were in these pods controlling what the Matrix humans would how they were living their lives, and it was our job to break through the Matrix. Because even the dissidents of society who choose their freedom over technocracy is living in the sewers or fighting for survival. Is that freedom? I guess one could say the ultimate freedom is death. That's the ultimate freedom. But then we don't even know beyond death So again, I suppose it comes down to the only true freedom is in your mind, whether you're being a dissident or whether you are accepting the technocratic world. I don't know. I'm just postulating some things out here, and I'd love your viewpoints on it, really. So maybe the real test is just acceptance of everything. Maybe the Buddhists and the Tao, you know, they really do have that is the answer. Acceptance of whatever's to come instead of this constant fighting. See, people think that they have to be fighting for their rights, but it is just always a fight. It's draining. It's exhausting. I don't know. I don't even know if I believe what I'm actually saying, to be honest with you. I guess ultimately, whether it's mainstream, whether it's conspiracy, whatever it may be, it's distraction against, I believe, something much bigger. And I believe that to be the Phoenix event. And I don't know why I've taken on that belief system. Maybe it's because it's cyclical and it's been shown to have happened before. Maybe because it's certainly not from a biblical perspective, because I'm not religious. And I said to my friend the other day, I said, you imagine if Jason from Archaics is right about the Phoenix event. Imagine being blissfully unaware of what's going on around you because you've got this headset on. Maybe that's the ultimate goal. Maybe it's not about control. Maybe it's the fact that they do know what's coming. And I know this sounds absolutely freaking absurd, but maybe they do want to protect humanity, because not everything is dark. There is light. There is benevolence in this world. And it's very difficult to see the benevolence when you are bombarded with the constant negative. And again, that was another reason why I stopped watching the news. But unfortunately, the mainstream news, the BBC, the likes of BBC, things like that, which I stopped watching, it's infiltrated the likes of YouTube, and I've become this YouTube junkie, where I spend a lot of time watching YouTube, looking for answers that nobody really has. You know, whether that's about the gold market, whether that's about crypto, whether it's about conspiracy, whether it's about this, whether nobody's got the answers. It's all just distraction. So is it a case of just living in a state of flow? Again, I go back to the Tao. Anyway, if you got to the end of this video, thank you, because I recognise it is a bit of a ramble. It may not make much sense. It's not very energetic. It's just a straight talking, because I've not been feeling energetic the last few days. I've been feeling a bit down in the dumps, and I think it's because I'm in a state of I don't know which way to turn. I know that I just need to accept where I am now. I'm safe and life's good at this moment in time. But like most people, I am one of these that looks into the future. Not always the best place.